Thank you very, very much. Excellent introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. As I pointed out earlier, do bear with us. We're not professional public speakers. We're game designers, so we spend most of our time sitting in small rooms with computers and talk to very few people. But
only
yes.
the imaginary people we make up, it's fine.
So hopefully we'll go through what different roles there are for in the tabletop industry and how we got into the tabletop industry, and then give you some advice as to how to get started, basically.
Can I just check, can everyone hear us? Yeah, fantastic.
Cool.
Thank you so much.
Come a tiny bit closer to the mic.
A little bit closer. There we go. Is that better?
How's that?
Is that better? Fantastic. Thank
Okay,
you.
do you want me to go first?
Yeah, you're first.
Always have to go first. Okay, so going by my notes, I'm David Chapman. I've been, hello, look, we can do this bit. Look at that. I've been writing tabletop RPGs for about 25 years, although I tried to get into it a lot earlier in the late 80s. For the last 4 years, I've been working full-time as a producer at Cubicle 7 Games, the people who do lots of Warhammer RPGs and things like that, but I don't do that. I've worked online such as Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Army of Darkness, Conspiracy X, All Flesh Must Be Eaten, Starship Adventures, Cabal, Laundry, and I'm probably best known as the designer and developer for the Doctor Who RPG licensed by the BBC, and also created a game called Wild, which I can show off later if you like. And I also created and host a annual thing in August called RPG a Day, which is online to try and get people talking in a positive way about the tabletop industry. Over to you.
I realised the thing I redacted didn't make it to there. That was my bad. I'm gonna say it anyway. Hi, my name is Eleanor Hingley. I've been writing professionally and occasionally editing for role-playing games since 2019. I've worked on lines like Doctor Who, the role-playing game, for instance, roleplay Fight or Fright, Broken Weave, Aegean, Spire, Hollows, Heart, Wrath and Glory, and Dungeon in a Box. I also publish my own games on itch.io, including Ex Libris, Talking Thunder, and Seed of an Idea. If you actually want to find out more about those, I'll have them out in the atrium later, so you can come and have a look. I'm Discord manager, social media manager, Eastern chapter organiser, and one of the newsletter writers for the UK Tabletop Industry Network. And I've also written articles for Destructoid about tabletop gaming. And in fact, the UK Tabletop Industry Network is effectively sort of presenting this talk. We've got a stall out in the kind of main forum area. So the UK Tabletop Industry Network, also known as UK TIN, is a community focused around supporting and encouraging tabletop workers across the UK. We have a rapidly growing Discord community of nearly 500 members where veteran tabletop professionals and aspiring creatives alike share their experience and advice. UK TIN helps creators reach their audience by providing table space at conventions like UK Games Expo, coming up this weekend in Birmingham, and Dragon Meet, which is in London. We have chapters across the UK with more on the way, including a monthly meet in Norwich at Albion Games Cafe, which I organise, and an expanding archive of talks about all aspects of the industry. Please come talk to me in the atrium main forum area for more info. I've got like examples of stuff our members create and all kinds of like social media links for you to follow up on. So absolutely come talk to me. Cool. Okay, what's next? There we go, the overview. Why is this double-sided wide?
That's right. I discovered I've got like 20 blank pages in here.
Oh, that's exciting.
My printer decided to add them.
They decided to get you to improv.
do you want to?
I'll do the there's a little intro bit.
So
the tabletop industry actually encompasses multiple sub-industries with their own ecosystems. Rather than one industry, it's actually kind of three industries in a trench coat. Broadly, these are tabletop role-playing games, or TTRPGs, such as Dungeons & Dragons, Call of Cthulhu, Pathfinder, Blades in the Dark, and Doctor Who the role-playing game. And then you've got board and card games, which are things like Catan, also known as Settlers of Catan, Ticket to Ride, collectible games like Magic the Gathering, and Lorcana, and things like Cards Against Humanity. And then finally, miniatures games or war games such as Warhammer, Infinity, Star Wars Shatterpoint, Marvel Crisis Protocol, and Gaslands. So there is some overlap between these. There are some grey areas where it's like some things don't fall into these categories, but these are the very broad categories that it sort of make up this tabletop industry.
Cool.
Yeah, do you want to go to the next bit?
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, that bit is next.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because we both work in RPGs, we're mostly concentrating on tabletop RPGs, but a lot of the stuff that we're going to cover, we'll cover all of them, basically.
Yeah, and UK Tin is very much across all of these industries as well, so while we may not necessarily be able to answer your specific questions about board or card game design or miniatures game design, there will be somebody on our Discord who can.
Cool. So within tabletop gaming industry, there are loads of roles which you could go for. Rather than just doing everything yourself, you could specialize. So every game requires a writer, artists, well, multiples of each, an editor, graphic designer, producer, production manager, distributors, marketing.
The last bit we don't.
We have it
anyway, and I say that as one of them.
But publicising is always good. Or you could be crazy and decide to take on all the roles yourself and multi-class it and do everything. So we're going to break down exactly how an RPG is put together by going through the roles. So you know what you're getting yourself in for.
Yeah, we definitely both multi-class as well, so this will be fun.
So, did you want to start, or shall I?
I'll introduce the writers.
Okay.
So, writers produce the words and mechanics for tabletop games. So this should really be called writer and designer because the two almost always go hand in hand. You're almost always going to be engaging with both sides of role-playing games. And in fact, in most tabletop parts of the tabletop industry, you'll still be doing both realistically, unless you really, really specialise. Writers might find themselves working on backgrounds and setting detail, which is sometimes known as fluff, rules design, which is sometimes known as crunch, adventures, which are like the episodes of an ongoing role-playing game campaign, but they're written so that other people can run them, and things like non-player characters and enemies.
I've added a little note there. Not usually fictional scripts.
Yes,
because as a producer, I get a lot of writers submitting to try and work for us, and half of it's here's part of the novel that I've written, and that's not usually a good indicator as to whether you can write
read my
RPGs.
Novel, Dave.
I'm sorry.
Why?
I can out of work, but yes, I've also made a little note there saying large rule books by big publishers like ones we've got here. Haha. This just seems to be an advert for the Doctor Who RPG, but there you go, Doctor Who RPG, there we go. So a book on that sort of size, you're looking about 100,000 words at least. So you usually need more than one writer. But a lot of the more recent ones, like Mortborg and things like that, are a lot less word focused and a lot more graphic designy, so you might be able to skip a bit with that.
Yeah, most writers do all of these things. To some extent. There are some rare occasions where fictional scripts are needed, but it's really, really rare. The majority of the time, you're basically going to be looking at a writing style that blends like information and creativity. So you're trying to help enable other people to tell stories, and that means that you're essentially making them a little manual, but also an inspiration, an inspiring document that instructs them and also helps them and enables them to tell their own stories.
Cool.
Yeah, that's that.
Boop.
Do you want to do this one?
I can do.
You're better at.
Good old Bob.
Yeah.
Okay, so artists make the books pretty. They give your audiences the first and most enduring impression of the game, usually through the cover art, advertising materials, or the internal art. Artists usually find themselves working on the characters, the creatures, the background scenes, or illustrating specific uses of powers or skills or things like that. There's also, you can be very specialised and concentrate on maps. There's a couple of really good map people in Tin who just do maps, and they're amazing.
And they're also very generous with their time and expertise. So if it's something you're interested in, 100% come along and ask.
And other than that, you work on things like what locations there are. Art briefs can be super specific, usually from the publishers, which are saying we want this person to look like this. I mean, especially when it comes to working with an IP like Warhammer, it has to match the company's look, basically. Add some skulls, or it can be completely free and open. One of the recent ones we worked on was Broken Weave, which collaborated very closely with the artists to actually create the environments and the world, and they got written into the game because the art was so good.
Yeah, I actually, when I wrote the adventure for Broken Weave that came with the GM screen, I wrote the monster description, and then the artist made such beautiful pictures based on it, these really incredible designs, that I actually changed the description of the monster to incorporate it, because it was so amazing.
Cool.
Artists also, they quite often need to work to a variety of sizes and like different like house styles and things. So the more flexibility you have as an artist, the better, really, in the RPG industry, because you might be asked to produce like a full spread page, or you might be asked to just produce like a little potion bottle. There's a huge range. So I think
okay.
That's everything on that one.
Head on. There we go.
Editing. Do you want me to do this one?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Editors, proofreaders, and sensitivity readers are all vital parts of making tabletop products accessible. Good editors are multitaskers, as you can see. They have a good grasp of language and grammar, written expression, and local variations in language. For instance, a lot of the time you'll need to be familiar with American spellings, because if you're working with a company that primarily produces in America, they'll expect that. They'll often need to be sensitive to word uses, inconsistencies, and terminology. Editors are very useful for checking whether a piece of writing is within a house style for a publisher or for a particular property. So, for instance, at one point I was working on Wrath and Glory, which is the Warhammer 40,000, well, one of the Warhammer 40,000 RPGs, and the Doctor Who RPG almost at the same time, and they have wildly different sort of word choices, styles of writing, and then on top of that it was working with Cubicle 7, who have their own house style as well. So I was so grateful for the editors, because they would kind of catch the things I'd missed around those particular stylistic choices. And then you've also got sensitivity readers, who are relatively kind of recently emerging, but they're really, really important, because they look at the wider context of like diversity and historical representation in a work. So they would look at the hidden implications of particular words and whether a piece of work is true to the cultures it's representing.
Cool. I made a little note here saying a good editor can make or break a good book. But one of my earliest ones was working on Conspiracy X for a company called Eden Studios in the States. The text I handed in was okay, but the editor took it away and completely restructured what I'd written, handed it back and said, look, take a look at this. Don't you think this works better? And of course it did a hell of a lot. So find yourself a good editor, and seriously don't try and do it yourself, because you've been looking at the words for so long. You kind of go a bit numb to it, and then editors looking at it with fresh eyes.
Yeah, I've been doing this for a reasonable amount of time, and I've written quite a lot, but even so, a particular consultant on a project absolutely blew my mind in terms of how efficiently they used words to express what I was trying to vaguely express. So really, really important.
Cool. Hey.
Oh, I love that page.
There's a bit of an advanced look at a spread from the Laundry, which is coming out fairly soon. So graphic design. So a major part of getting tabletop products to the table is making them friendly for the players, so that they can actually find all the information and it makes sense when it's on the page. So every page, every card in every collectible game, and every character sheet has gone through the same lengthy art and layout process to bring different elements together. things as simple as how a piece of box out text.
I specifically wrote that because of this. Because it's beautiful.
Our graphic designer designed all the box outs because it's about spies and the British government. So the box outs all look like classified documents and things like that. All of that sort of thing, the graphic designer comes up with. Some they can have a major influence on how things look and feel. Broken Weave's another good example. The graphic designer added stitching around the sides of the boxes to make it look really cool. Victoriana, there's a really nice ornate clock that is a graphic design feature that goes through all the chapters, gradually ticks around as you go through the book, and all these things really make the book stand out and a lot clearer to read as well.
Yeah, it's. I mean, you can see just from this one page, it's actually really interesting to sit and analyse a spread from a tabletop role-playing book, because you start to notice all the little subtle things that they've done that you didn't notice when you were reading it, but they all enhance it, they all improve it, they all bring more of a tone, and it makes such a huge difference. So never ever underestimate the value of a good graphic designer. We value them.
And if there's any consolation, the artist who supplied this image was all part of one big square bit, and the graphic designer actually extracted her and put her to the front, and then added the torn paper and stuff like that. They work wonders and make everything a lot clearer.
The next one is definitely a you one. You're going to be talking for a while.
Oh God, I'm so sorry. Okay, so yes, in advance, I'm a producer. I didn't know what I was getting into before I took the role, so here we go. It sounds a bit like a grandiose role, but it's basically you determine what the product is before it starts. So what the themes are, what the tone is, why the product exists. You work out how to do it, how many pages, what the structure of the book is, how much art goes where, how much of the budget can be spent on art and how much of it goes on to writing. And once that's determined, they break down the chapters of the book, work out how big like the rules section's going to be compared to the character creation, and then they break that down into individual sections, and then they allocate it to freelancers, writers and artists, and then they check everything that comes in that's submitted, make sure it's all right, make sure it's in the same tone of voice. And this usually involves horrific spreadsheets, flowcharts, Gantt charts, project management skills, and I've written down a lot of stress and hair loss.
Yeah, that your job is so complicated. I just make the words.
So,
I don't have anything to add. I don't do that.
That's all right.
If you are an indie creator, you'll be doing all this yourself, so enjoy that. I do that. It's actually way easier when you're not having to deal with all of the sort of size of the publishing industry that Dave has to deal with.
And as the producer's doing all that, they farm out the other element of production to a production manager who looks after the physical or electronic production of a product, whether this is ensuring that a PDF's downloadable from a web store, or like drive-through, or checking the PDF works as a file that can be used to print on demand, or sourcing printers, getting samples, checking the print requirements like DPIs and bleeds and stuff like that. And then they check the test prints from the printers to make sure there's no last minute errors, authorize print runs, work out how many they hope to print, and then they sort out shipping from wherever the printers are. Usually this is either Europe or China, because they are good for large scale runs, although if you're a small indie, lots of really good UK-based printers.
There are some amazing UK-based printers. It's definitely a growing area, and that's one of those things where places like communities like UK Tin and other communities can really help you find people who work with you to produce something that really does what you want it to do.
In our company, the production manager also sources things like SKUs and ISBNs.
What's an SKU?
That's it's the code number that is for your product, so okay, you don't get it mixed up with the one that's got a similar title. For example, if you have a line of 40 Warhammer books, they all start with Warhammer colon something, and sometimes that bit after the colon gets cut off on the spreadsheets, so an SKU makes it easier for you to find them. And everything book orientated will need an ISBN number basically, and submitting stuff to the British Library, and usually the production manager sorts all that out as well.
Yeah, if you're an indie creator, Things like ISBNs do become a part of your production line at the point where you are trying to supply to retailers, because they will probably need an ISBN and an SKU in order to actually be able to stock your product. So if you're an indie creator who's looking to put your work into shops, you're going to need to think about those kind of aspects.
Which handily leads on to distribution. I've had to use this picture because my wife is addicted to Death Stranding at the moment.
This is how all RPGs are distributed, by the way. Sorry to break it to you.
Oh, okay. You have to carry them there yourself. On a large scale, you need to find people to get that product into shops. And usually this involves a distributor who does all this for you. They will take about 50% of the cover price of your book for the honor of doing so. But in order to do that, you need to sell the product to the distributor. And this usually involves making a sell sheet, which is basically a single sheet of A4 with a picture of the product, the back cover blurb, the SKU and the ISBN, and how much it's going to be and how cool it is. Basically, you sell it to them and say, you should get this into shops as much as possible. Otherwise, you're doing it yourself.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, the sell sheets are still going to be useful to you, even if you're not planning on putting things in kind of larger retailers. Like I made one when I took my zines to the Holloway in Norwich, who kindly agreed to stock them for me. And it was so helpful being able to just hand something over and say, here you go, this is all of the information you need. So prepping those can be really, really valuable for you, even if you're not yet planning on getting them to the larger scale distribution. This is actual documented evidence of me on the way to UK Games Expo this coming weekend. Don't know how you got that.
You're going to walk it all the way?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay.
Do you want me to do this one?
Couldn't find a good picture for marketing, sorry.
Irony. So marketing specialists in tabletop games are experts in bridging the gap between audience and product in a niche market dominated by a handful of companies. So you might think marketing isn't actually a particularly big deal in tabletop games because people tend to share the information about the tabletop games they love just very freely. You know, there's a huge amount of talk about them on the internet and things like that. But the truth is that it is a quite small, comparatively small market. You know, bigger than it used to be, but it is, you know, compared to things like films and video games, it is a little bit small. And there are a few big companies that can put a lot of money behind marketing. So it is actually really, really important, and it can make a huge difference as to whether anybody hears about your game, because they have to hear about it to play it and then to tell their friends that they loved it. The marketing for something like the new Dungeons & Dragons core books looks very different from the marketing for an independent creator's zine. It's often folded into other roles such as producer, but it can be a specialist area in its own right. One of the big things that's impacted that is the use of crowdfunding as a core part of many companies' funding models. That is a whole growing area where companies are suddenly having to develop marketing pitches before the product is even finished. And so there is a growing area of specialists in marketing who do specialize in crowdfunders. And they are very valuable people, and we like them. But yeah, the other thing, social media is a huge part of this. I shouldn't forget about that. I volunteer as the social media manager for the UK Tabletop Industry Network, and one of the things that I really try to do is to bring audiences to smaller projects, because that's where community can really, really help. Community is its own kind of marketing, but it's marketing that isn't cynical. It's marketing that is about, you know, sharing something that's really important to you and trying to raise up as many different projects so that, you know, the rising tide raises all boats, lifts all boats kind of ethic. And so that's what I try to do with Tin. But there's always a balancing act between, you know, just overwhelming people with information and trying to bring attention to specific projects. So that it's a difficult one to strike. Mm-hmm. You've got a bit that's about sensible things.
I just said marketing's always tricky. If you're not very good at it, and a lot of us aren't, let's face it, you're never very good at singing your own praises. Find somebody who can do it for you. Basically, other people will sing your praises better than you can usually, because you don't feel embarrassed or sort of anything like that. It can easily be a full-time job though, because especially when you're trying to run like 5 different social media accounts and organise advertising and things like that as well. So yeah, try and get somebody else to do it for you if you can.
Yeah, that's where, like I say, that's a really good point, because that's one of the things where communities help with that kind of thing. You know, there will be people there who are happy to tell you what's amazing about your game because you can't see it right now, and that's okay. Oh boy, yeah, and the final one. There are other areas, but these are the broad, largest areas. So a rising area of tabletop and the tabletop industry is the world of streaming and social media influence. Tabletop does lend itself well to things like actual plays and long-form media, but it can occasionally be something where it's a very hard one to market in a short, snappy kind of way. TikTok and Instagram have allowed people to put out short form content like GM advice, class builds or reviews that can get very popular, but translating that into ongoing income is a challenge for any influencer. So if you can find your niche, it's great. But it is a saturated market right now with algorithms that prioritize particular kinds of content. If you're considering going into this area, it's worth thinking about whether there are other roles it can tie into. So for instance, if you're doing an actual play series, consider whether you want to write up the adventures and sell them at conventions, because that would actually mean that you can move from that influencer perspective to something that actually helps you sustain your own company. And you could also do things like approach companies to sponsor you to cover their game. So like there's also the journalist industry, which it's taken a few hits. I'm not going to lie, it's taken a few hits very recently, but it's still absolutely out there, and there's an audience for non-clickbait content that promotes new products, discusses releases for collectible and miniatures games, and engages with changes in the industry. So it's definitely out there, and it is something that anybody can start doing as well, which is a really nice way in. But it is always, if you want to make it into your career, it's worth thinking about how it ties into a larger income stream and a larger sort of sustainable creative or business perspective. And most people also multi-class, because that's the last one. There we go.
Multi-class.
Multi-class. Oh, is that too old a reference? Are we too old, Dave?
I'm too old. Everybody's seen Fifth Element, haven't they? Come on, okay.
So
yeah, if you're doing this as an indie creator, you're very likely to have to do every single one of these roles yourself, and you'll have to be able to publish, write, do the art, but it's not out of reach. It's all doable. I brought a great example of that with me.
Yes, do it.
Mothership, one of the biggest RPGs at the moment. It's a very small A5, black and white. The artwork in there, you could do it. The writing is genius, and it sells like hotcakes, and it's certainly accessible. Yeah,
that is one of the really beautiful things about the RPG industry. Up on our stall in the atrium, I've actually got loads of examples of things from fully beautifully published, really, really rich, kind of richly illustrated books, you know, down to A4 printed black and white pieces, and they all belong. They are all part of this industry, and they're all a really important part of it. So anybody can start from a little one-page RPG and potentially someday put out a beautifully illustrated book. It's a really wonderful industry for that sort of diversity. And
you have full control over what you're doing as well. You're not pandering to a boss, basically. Yeah, a lot of our discussion has been around very kind of big publishers and how they work, because, I mean, for a start, Dave works for one, so, and I write for a lot of, big publishers. That's like a lot of my daily bread and butter work. But you can do both. Like, you can choose to be fully independent, you can choose to be part of a big company, you can do both. And that's really wonderful, a really wonderful aspect of this industry. Cool. Okay, we're going to talk about our roots in.
I know it's always a bit like when someone's like, I'm just going to recount my life story.
Oh, no. It's story time.
It's story time. Everyone's path is different, as in any creative industry. Things change very quickly as new technologies and distribution methods arise. Something worth noting about the tabletop industry is that, as with every creative industry, it isn't what you know, but who you know, but what you know also helps. So reading lots of different RPGs, playing lots of different RPGs is also really important. It isn't just about schmoozing and networking. And also, the who you know is easier than many industries, as the community is very open for aspiring writers to sort of make connections, to share their work, to connect with other people and discuss their rules design. So now this is your route.
Oh, God.
Is David's story.
Oh, dear. Okay, so I'm going to, Tron reference, set the Wayback Machine to the late 1980s. I played Ghostbusters, the RPG, thought it was the greatest thing I'd ever read because it was funny, and thought, look, somebody's had fun writing this, so hey, why can't I do that? So back in the late 80s, getting into RPGs, it involved typing manuscripts and then shipping them to America in a big envelope. But thankfully, I finally got into it in the early 2000s, late 90s, when I first started talking to Eden Studios about a Conspiracy X comic, because I went into comic publishing for a while, because, you know, same sort of thing, small independent publishing. I put my comic publishing business aside and then kind of asked them, hey, how about writing for you? And the big point that comes out of this is they said, write something, prove you can do it. And this will be a recurring theme coming up later.
Yeah.
So I wrote a supplement for one of their games called All Flesh Must Be Eaten. I wrote a supplement called Summer Camp Stalkers and Unstoppable Evil, which is basically a Friday the 13th style RPG. It never saw light of day, but it proved I could do it. And from that, they said, well, okay, you can do that sort of stuff. Here's a game setting that we've got that somebody's written. Can you stick the rules into it and make it? And that was my first published work, which was a game called Terra Primate, which was a big rip-off of Planet of the Apes. And after that, I just basically volunteered for anything they had going, which led to me working on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Angel, Army of Darkness, and then eventually pitched them to convert Conspiracy X into their house system, because it wasn't. It was a different game system at the time, and then that kind of led to getting an email from somebody who'd bought Conspiracy X and said, "Hey, that's really good. We should get more people playing RPGs." And that chap was Chris Birch, who now runs Modiphius, who publishes Fallout, Star Trek, all those kind of things. Back in those days, he was just leaving doing t-shirt design, and said, oh, I know somebody at the BBC, just as I said, hey, we should do a game about Doctor Who because people will like that. It'll get more kids interested. And we teamed up with a couple of young upstarts who formed Cubicle 7 basically off the back of Doctor Who. And the rest is kind of wibbly wobbly, timey wimey.
Absolutely. So I came in through a sort of mix of independent publishing with an anthology of adventures that were on the DMs Guild, which is it's the sort of Dungeons & Dragons community content platform. We'll talk about those in a bit. And it was part of the Uncaged anthology, which was a big group of writers all coming together to write adventures that recontextualized female monsters with like feminist takes on them. So I sort of applied for this completely out of the blue. One of my friends sent me the link. I just applied for it, and I thought nothing's really going to come of this. It'll be something that maybe happens, and then who knows? Nothing. I was trying to write a lot of novels at the time. I did it almost like as a side thing, and at the sort of same time, Cubicle 7 had an all call for writers for the Doctor Who RPG. David suggested I apply, and actually introduced me to the producer for it at Cubicle 7, which meant I was able to reach out directly, and then that producer advocated for my work on other projects. It turned out that the people I met on the Uncaged anthology also brought me on to other projects. The Uncaged anthology was actually a huge success in DM's Guild terms, and I'm still really good friends with a lot of the people, and working, in fact, at the moment, working with people who worked on it. So that's, it definitely led to unexpected things. So a lot of my story comes down to a combination of luck and privilege, but that provided the opportunities. I then needed to build a reputation for myself. So the thing was that I just, like David, I took every opportunity that came up. I took every piece of work that came my way, and I built myself a reputation for being someone who could hit deadlines, being someone who produced consistent work, someone who could work well with others, and someone who could work on intellectual properties. I have this sort of superpower where I can basically sit down and just load a setting into my brain, and I'll remember it for the time that I'll be an expert for the time I'm writing for that property, and then a year later I'll have forgotten all of it. But I just leaned into that. I developed my reputation based on that. With the help of an awful lot of people who advocated for me. And that, I think one of the big things that both of our stories show is that we all need that sort of community to get enthused about our work. None of us can sort of do this in isolation, and that makes sense for role-playing because it's a collaborative art form. It's all about telling stories together. And yeah, we need to be able to help each other tell stories. So I'm hoping that this might get some more people to kind of reach out to communities to maybe think you can do it too, or help you if you're already doing it, and start making those connections. Okay, this is a lot of intense amount. We're going to have to improv this bit because I didn't write it. Okay. It's sort of self-explanatory is the thing. So this is the sort of nitty-gritty. Access points for putting your work out there. So this is much more about the practicalities of what it is you are putting out there into the world. So for self-publishing, itch.io and DriveThruRPG are the big platforms. DriveThruRPG is a little bit more mainstream. Itch.io is a lot more indie. They both have their own quirks, advantages and disadvantages, but it is well worth looking into those. Personally, I put my stuff out on itch.io, and it definitely has a smaller audience, but it's also a really good gathering point for independent creators. I know some people have had real success on DriveThruRPG. Somewhat luck of the draw, but it's got a bigger audience. So those are very much the big platforms to look into. Linked to that, the community content platforms are mostly on DriveThruRPG. So if you already have a DriveThruRPG creator account, you're going to be able to write for these community content platforms. But what these are is big companies, like big publishers, put out their rule set for independent creators to use. And so people can make their own, say for instance, 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons content on the DM's Guild. And so these generally have their own restrictions and rules around what you can and can't upload. But they also have a lot more support, and they'll have things like images you can use in your work, or templates. So it's really worth looking into that if you're a big fan of a particular rule set, because it can be a fantastic way to sort of start building up your confidence and start building up a product line that you can then use as part of one of your other approaches. I would say probably don't try and rely on it too much, because there is always a bit of an uncertainty about how publishers are going to change their rules on uploading things. And also those crowdfunding those community content platforms have their own kind of like pits and troughs of interest and audience.
Mothership's quite big at the moment for people making their own supplements for it. Free League do have an option where you can write your own Tales from the Loop sort of stuff, which is one of my fave games.
Chaosium also has one.
For doing Cthulhu.
Wizards of the Coast does, which is one of the biggest ones. So it's worth having a look out there to see whether your favourite rule set is actually available for you to write things in, because it can be a fantastic way of getting into the swing of it. Crowdfunding. So this one comes with a big flag of this is an incredibly good route in, and it is an incredibly dangerous route in. It is both. It is a double-edged sword. It's one of those things that deserves its own talk, really, and we actually have some talks around that sort of thing on the tin sort of seminar folder. But in very broad terms, it gives you potentially a big injection of cash. You then need to actually produce the thing, and if you overcommit, that's very dangerous. So it's something to do some research into if you're planning on doing a crowdfunder. Like, read about other people's experiences. A lot of creators put their own experiences about using crowdfunding online. So do your research before you start it. Know what you're going into, but it is one of the backbones of the funding model for independent and big publishing in tabletop right now. And that's across all of the different sub-industries as well. Mm-hmm. And then finally, routes into working with big publishers. So if you want to try and have the ambition to work with Cubicle 7 or Wizards of the Coast or Modiphius or one of the many big publishers, Chaosium, there are lots of ways that you can kind of increase your chances of being able to work with them, which is things like follow their social media for open calls, check their website for whether they have a jobs email or a submissions email.
Yeah, scroll to the bottom of their web page, there's usually a little careers thing. Click that. You never know, they kind of hide it. Great suggestion. Yeah, absolutely. Communities like Rising Tide and UK Tin have job boards, job listings. There is a Facebook group and a website for tabletop jobs as well. And there's like a link to the website version. I forgot to put the tabletop game in, but I think it's just called Tabletop Jobs. Yeah. So it's well worth checking those out. Keep an eye out. You might luck into exactly the right opportunity. Go for it. Like, always go for it if you think you can do it and that you want to do it. All right. Okay, so the practical advice.
We're wrapping up roughly soonish, and then hopefully we should have a bit of time for Q&A soon.
So to go off the back of what I said about how I got in, first thing is prove you can do it. Because the first thing that anybody, big publisher or anything, they'll want to be able to see that you can write or draw or edit or something like that. So basically, do it for yourself. Do a little zine publishing thing. Do anything. It's really easy to do these days.
Things like Mothership Start as those kind of passion projects.
And then when they say, "Can you do this sort of thing?" Or if you're going to click that link on the careers page on a big publisher's website, you can send them a link to it, or you can send them a copy of it and actually prove that you can do it, because that's what they're going to be looking for.
Yeah, that kind of seeing something through to the end is really important, because being able to prove that you're reliable it's a magical talent in the industry. People really like it when you can prove you're reliable. So do that before they've even asked for it, before they know they want it. This is my top tip in particular that I always give people: create a portfolio. So artists, you'll already know about this. Graphic designers, you'll already know about this. But people quite often don't think about it for writing. So one of the most valuable sort of few hours I spent was many years ago turning a bunch of content that I'd written into one-page writing samples that demonstrated different things that I could do. So for me, for instance, I have a one-page adventure or dungeon room for like the kind of classic 5th edition dungeon crawl. I've got like a page of new mechanics for an existing system, such as like items and talents. And like I have a faction and NPC write-up, and I have a short setting write-up. And that basically demonstrates all the different skills that you might be, that a producer might be looking for. And you can just send those through, and most submissions, like most all calls, will ask for writing samples, and you just have them ready, and it makes it so much less stressful. And for art, you can show that you work in a lot of different styles. You can show that you can work in, say, covers, quarter pages, half pages, or border. So it really, it gives something for you to just send out there whenever you get that opportunity, because you have no idea when that's going to be. So prep them now, have them ready, and they will do you so well. They really will. Cool. Do you have anything to add about that one?
No, not at all.
Awesome.
That's all good.
Okay. So yeah, know your strengths and weaknesses.
Oh, I know my weakness. I'd say my weakness was adventure writing, but I did quite like adventure writing when I do it, but I'm not a great one. I'm more of a game system writer. So yeah, I know my strengths and weaknesses. Aim for that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to art, you need to be able to draw in different styles and genres, make you more employable, unless you really want to focus on one thing. And I know some artists who just do Warhammer 40,000, and that's their shtick.
And you can tell with Warhammer 40,000, for instance, if you look at a piece of art from an era, you can tell how old that piece of that particular part of the property is, because they go through different eras. So a good artist will be able to will practice that sort of style if that's what they want to go into.
But with writing, you need to be able to write everything, like basically adventures, mechanical sections, NPCs, make them exciting. Eleanor's very good at writing multi-path storylines.
I love doing that.
And managing to tie it all together at the end. You need to be able to do all that, as well as convey rules and things like that, which can get a bit technical, and try and make it sound interesting or fun, and not sound like you're reading stereo instructions.
And I would always have said my weakness was systems design, because I love role-playing game systems, but I always struggle to design them. And I designed a game last year, and it basically from the ground up. So you can improve anything that you perceive as a weakness. As Dave said, he's good at writing adventures now because he's done it a lot, and because he's learned how to challenge that, and it will make you so much more employable in this industry.
Making connections is another big one as well. Because
you're in the right place.
Yeah.
Well done.
Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so the big one on that is go to conventions if you can, engage on social media, talk to people. We are all very approachable. We're not really horrible people, honest.
People love talking about their systems as well. If you go to a convention, go and find the people who write the systems you love and ask them, what were you thinking when you did this thing? Don't say, what were you thinking when you did this thing? Say, how did you come up with this? Tell them examples of how you've used the rules in interesting ways. They will love it.
Yep.
Most of them will. Don't assume everybody, but most of them will love it.
Take business cards as well, especially if you've got links to your portfolio, which you have already created in advance.
Should also probably make sure you have some way for people to find you. So have a business card, have some. I use my itch.io page as my website basically, and I just have links to that everywhere.
But yeah, basically just network. I know it's difficult trying to put yourself out there, or to actually sort of communicate with other people when you spend all your time staring at a computer screen. But yeah, it's doable, and yeah, we're all relatively friendly. Honest.
Yeah. There's also things like game jams. Those are amazing. Itch.io does a lot of those, and especially check out those run by people who wrote systems you like, because there's a lot of system-themed game jams. And then find local groups as well. We have Tin East, which is UK Tin's Eastern chapter. And also there's a wonderful group of mostly video game creators, who a lot of them are here today, but also they do have some tabletop creators called Norfolk Game Devs. They're really lovely. Absolutely come and engage with all of us. It also helps you find people who are willing to advocate for you, and in turn you can then advocate for others, because that's how this industry and this community works. Pay it forward. Always pay it forward. Final one. The final one.
Yes.
This is your tip, so you do it.
It's so good. We named it twice. But yes, it's a very small industry, really. it's getting bigger. There's a couple of talks coming up today by James Wallace, who's great at saying how enormous the game developing industry is in the UK, and it is getting big. But at its heart, you can do it, and you can do it yourself. It doesn't take a lot of.
You can print your one-page RPG on your home printer.
Yeah, and you don't need
Or
a
your work
fancy
printer.
program to do it. One of my favourite RPG books was written in Word and laid out in Word,
Yeah.
and that's horrific.
There are ways to do all of it, basically, from your bedroom if you need to, and that's why we love it. So there's some links there to find us. Please check out the UK Industry Network. That will take you to our newsletter, which has a lot of really interesting information every month. And come and talk to me out there. Thank you so much to Norwich Games Festival for having us to speak. This has been really awesome. And there are links to where you can find our stuff. That's my itch.io page and David's autocratic.com.
Very nerdy blog, which isn't always about games, but it's very nerdy.